Welcome everybody joining us today. I am Olga Atamanova, welcoming you at the Media Center Inform, and I welcome everybody joining us off or online. Almost 10 years that we have seen this war. Today is day number 706 since the full-scale invasion. Today's press conference is very important. We will see how the Freerights Human Rights Association, part of the 5 o'clock association, will present the register of the executions, tortures, and cases of inhumane treatment of the civilian population in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. We will also see the roadmap on the future investigations to make sure that all the recorded cases to criminal investigation will lead to further inevitability of the punishment of those responsible for the war crimes. Today's panelists are Anastasiia Malynka is Freerights Human Rights Association Information Manager. We have also our guest, Maryia Kvitsinskaya, who is joining us online, representing the World Organization Against Torture. Mr. Oleksandr Ziuz, the head of the Division for Interaction with the State and other organizations at the Prosecutor's General Department for Combating Crimes committed during the armed conflict in Ukraine. This is a very important communication when we see the interaction between government and non-governmental entities. I would like you to begin, Ms. Malynka. Since the beginning of the full-scale intervention, this Freerights Human Rights Association had begun to document all the war crimes with the help of the network. The organization has a lot of experience in combating tortures. This is our special focus, the cases of torturing, the cruel treatment of the civilians. My point is that over the 18 months that we have been putting this information together, we have put together 333 cases of tortures, and I'm talking only about cases. It's not about the victims, because the number of victims cannot be established now. One case may include one person or dozens of persons. The information has been gathered through the publicly available data from National Police, from General Prosecutor's Office, from video and photographs available on different websites published by the media. That is why I want to emphasize that this is a complex work. We had to constantly work with pain and suffering, but at the same time, we have seen moments when we were happy for those Ukrainians that this nation was opposing the occupying force. They don't want to live under the Russian protectorate. People either were actively repelling the aggression or were showing their opposition to the occupying force entering their territory or willing to leave these temporarily occupied territories. The most number of tortures has been recorded in the region of Kiev. I should have told you that 128 cases in Kherson region, 76 in Kharkiv, 34 in Zaporizhia region, 28 in Chernihivska region, 15 in Sumy region, 12 in Mykolaiv, 10 in Donetsk, and 4 in the Autonomous Crimean Republic. The majority of the exposed tortures has been explicated by the fact that the occupied territories that were liberated, we received much more information out from there. Respectively, the territories that are currently under the occupation, we don't know for sure what is going on there. We don't know about the atrocities regarding the civilian population. That is why we are continuing to gather such information. Should you be a witness or a victim of such disregard for human rights, we would like to hear from you. Another point is that this black register of ours has been translated into the English language. We want the international community to know about these atrocities and in general about this black page in the book of the Ukrainian history. The register itself does not include only the described cases that we have gathered. It also provides an analytical materials on how we describe the consequences why these people treat Ukrainian in such a way. We write about the anti-Ukrainian policies. We want to understand why is it that the so-called brotherly nation has turned us into people that must be degraded, must be killed. This is part of the Russian politics, beginning with the beginning of the full-scale invasion. In their territory, they have conducted more than 1.5 million different measures targeting children or younger generation, and 2,000 of those were dedicated and concentrated on the war in Ukraine. It signified the fact that every sixth Russian child of preschool age are in a way participating in such repressive anti-Ukrainian public awareness. And this is a strong part of the public policies. Let us talk about the cases that you have included into this black register in terms of age, the eldest, the youngest people, and what are the typical tortures and crimes. I think there are some tendencies that seem to be of having some trend that the Russians are using for and concerning the Ukrainian population. What do you think about these crimes against the Ukrainian civilians? What we have seen is that we have singled out the categories of civilians that were persecuted or tortured. These include former Ukrainian military pensioners of the law enforcement system, the people that are deemed by the Russian occupiers as those participating in Ukraine's resistance, of those that they think have some important information, former participants of the anti-terror campaign, and people who participated in the territorial resistance, the family and close ones of the Ukrainian military. That is why those strata of civilians are deemed to be confronting the Russian regime. Other category is pro-Ukrainian volunteers and activists, civil activists included, and the representatives of the local government or the other branches of the Ukrainian government, representatives of the infrastructure. We know, for example, about the mass torturing at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, where people were forced to cooperate with the Russians. These are the main categories of the civilians that were tortured. This is not to say that other people were living and enjoying their peaceful life. The Russian occupation means intimidation, it means repression, suppression, and the civilian population that were not included in the category that I have enumerated. They also lived in an environment of fear. They were suffering. As for the most typical methods of torturing, in general, the most cases and most abused method is beating. People were beaten. They suffered from applying electricity and other methods that I am not willing to share with you. These are heartbreaking procedures. I am now suffering when I think how inhumane methods have been applied. These atrocities, so brutal, so dirty methods of conducting the war, they are unacceptable in our time. I hope, Ms. Kvitsinskaya, that you are online, and I would like to invite you to join us. We know that the Ukrainian public want the perpetrators of war crimes to be brought to justice, including those who perpetrated war crimes against the civilian population. Let us talk about the roadmap for investigating war crimes. Thank you for the invitation for this press conference. It's an important issue. My colleagues are doing an amazing job while documenting these war crimes. Our organization is active in almost 90 countries in the world. Sometimes we know that the non-governmental organizations not always documented the cases, and they were not followed up. There were some database set up, but there it ended. Together with the 5 a.m. coalition, we have set ourselves to make sure that all these cases must be the basis for submissions, both legally and in terms of advocacy. We have developed 2 documents. The first one is the roadmap for investigation against the crimes against humanity, including filtration in forums, disappearances, sexual abuse, and other crimes. From what we know now, and our analysis so far testifies to the fact that these crimes constitute part of the war crimes. That is to say, in the territories occupied by the Russian Federation, people who are loyal to the Ukrainian state are persecuted. Tortures, enforced missing of the people is one of the methods that they are using. Our roadmap has been developed on the example of the cases for the former Yugoslavia Tribunal. We have taken the theoretical basis to be adapted to the Ukrainian context. Why? Because the war crimes against humanity is the plan of the full-scale invasion. It includes a number of contextual components. This historic, political, and military aspects of the relations between Russia and Ukraine is part of the model of war crimes committed by the Russians. It must be taken on board while the investigations are taking place. That is why we have developed a detailed list of questions that will lead and will guide the representatives of the law enforcement when the witnesses are asked not to do these interviews randomly, but we want to have some basics, these pieces that will make up a general puzzle that fits together. We hope that this roadmap will help in future to investigate and bring to justice those perpetrators. We have also developed a roadmap for judicial and advocacy steps. We talk about the international accountability, including the United Nations mechanism, universal jurisdiction, and of course, our final goal is the International Criminal Court. Last year, we submitted a report to the Special Rapporteur on the tortures. On the basis of this, the rapporteur mentioned that the Russian Federation employs tortures as part of their war strategy. This is one piece of this general puzzle. We hope that the statements of this Commission and other UN government will speed up the process of bringing these perpetrators to justice. Our roadmaps have been developed for the Ukrainian 5 O'Clock Coalition and other non-governmental organizations for them to be able to investigate and provide materials on specific cases and episodes. Such expertise and information must be transferred to the law enforcement of Ukraine. As for the law enforcement, although our activities are focused on mainly non-governmental organizations, we would be happy to share our information with the law enforcement. I think it is very important for the National Police or General Prosecutor's Office to select a right way of investigation. We should be aware now what is the particular case or war crime that we want to prove. Such a process should not be chaotic or randomized. The other thing is to investigate specific cases. Since we have the representatives of the General Prosecutor's Office who is likely to talk about that in detail, but what we are seeing is that we don't have medical examinations of the victims of war crimes, even if the victims turn to the authorities and want the examination to be conducted. Sometimes such examinations are not held. I think this will negatively impact the efficiency of the investigation and will undermine the trust to the international bodies of investigation. We know that the medical proof is a cornerstone of investigating tortures, and unless such forensic materials according to the international standards have not been conducted, there will be a lot of questions in the House of Court. My appeal to the Ukrainian authorities is to take care of the accessibility of the medical examinations and perhaps the issue of the Roman status. When I talk about the crime against humanity, the fact that it is in the Rome Statute, when we call on the international community to do something about it, at least I think it's important that within Ukraine, our country has done its home assignment. Then we have a moral high ground to talk to the international colleagues. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to talk to you, Mr. Ziuz. We know that in this current period, a lot of NGOs, and international and Ukrainian, work on gathering proof of the Russian war crimes. How do they help you, the official law enforcement, all these cases, all this generalized information? Do you take such information on board, and how effective can it be to help you? The cooperation in this area, I think, is one of the most important issues that we are working on now. There is a lot of information. There are a lot of victims and witnesses of different kinds of breach of human rights. So I think it's part of the pre-trial investigation. The NGOs that are documenting war crimes, their activities are very important since the beginning of the full-scale incursion into Ukraine. They share with us a lot of information, including inhumane treatment of civilians, other factors of executions, the fact that must be checked upon, or we want them to register them to find the victims and witnesses. We work in this area. Once we have not enough information, we want to deliver on this to make sure that this case comes to the fact when the perpetrators are brought to justice. As of now, I think in terms of inhumane treatment of the civilians and the military prisoners of war, we have 148 those that have been charged, and a number of cases that have been effected by the Ukrainian courts over this month. We have been informed by the General Prosecutor's Office that a number of cases have been opened, including the localities in Kharkiv and Kherson regions. These war crimes are being investigated based also on the NGOs' information. This is not a primary source, but we take that kind of information on board. We know about the people who have been tortured in the temporarily occupied territories. So this is the area where we cooperate, including the international bodies and other countries who are also gathering information because they have the access to the Ukrainian refugees who share with them the information on the executions and tortures in different Ukrainian territories. We work on that information, we process those data, and we want to make sure that everybody who is guilty of the war crimes, irrespective of whether they are placed now, they will be brought to justice. I think I'm talking to the whole of the panel today. There are some challenges. I understand that the road is slippery. What will hamper us on a final stage of bringing them to justice? I think that Maryia has mentioned some of the cases. Perhaps you will tell us what is it that precludes Ukraine from taking on board the international practices of bringing the criminals or perpetrators of war crimes to justice. What are the complicated issues here? One thing is the massive character of such crimes. When we look into the world histories, and including the prosecutors on the tribunal for former Yugoslavia, for people coming from Herzegovina and other former Yugoslavian republics, now that we see the scope of such crimes, we don't seem to have enough resources to investigate effectively every single case. That's why we want to build up our institutional capabilities, both in the General Prosecutor's Office and the local prosecuting offices, to help them with the methodological help. We are conducting training, different training procedures, how to talk to witnesses, how to talk to victims in every single case, including sexual assault during this war conflict. The other issue is that medical examination, we are ready to cooperate here. If there are some misunderstandings or some delays at the local level, we stand ready to cooperate. You tell us where these soft spaces and links that don't work, we will make sure that we will rectify the situation. In every single case, we stand ready to guide the investigation. I think we have enough expertise now, and we've reached a good level of coordination with the local authorities. If there are some delays, we will make sure that the processes are sped up. Apart from the scale of these crimes, the other problem is that we were not ready for such number of cases. We were not ready to investigate every single case. The infrastructure for investigation of war crimes wasn't there. So we had to develop such mechanisms on the way. International experience is not always relevant here because they come with us with a ready-made solutions that are not integrated in the Ukrainian context. And this is what we need in the first place. They don't take into account the Ukrainian realities. The fact is that we are investigating these crimes while the hostilities are taking place. Yes, a lot of NGOs are helping us, but this is where we need a more close cooperation and coordination of measures with international bodies. We want to encompass everything, but I think it is high time that we should put every single case on a single shelf. We will see what will happen in 2024 and 25. It's not a matter of a year or so. The international experience is that it'll take decades to investigate. I would also like to end that the atrocities of the Russian military is not something new. The military campaign in Georgia, in Syria, and Chechnya, they have already exposed this instrument of torture and violence to turn the local population to be loyal to them in the territory that they have grabbed. The same tactics is applied in Ukraine as well. Our Black Register, the main goal of it is to come up with a book of memory. It will contain information on those disastrous events, on those horrific war crimes in the Ukrainian territory. This will show to the world, to the investigation, to the international partners, the atrocities that were committed here. I would like to present a copy of our Black Register to the representatives of the General Prosecutor's Office. I would like you to read it through. We believe that there will be a lot of useful information in searching for the witnesses, in searching for the new details. That's what my point is. Perhaps, Maryia, you would like to add. Can you hear us, Ms. Kvitsinskaya?
Я перепрошую, якщо це було до
Yes, I am online. You see, from our vantage point, is that we focus on proving the crimes against humanity, and I share the views of the General Prosecutor's Office representatives of the experiences that we are trying to draw from international expertise and history. They must be comprehensively adapted for the Ukrainian environment. Our roadmap tells us that what we have seen in the former Yugoslavia does not necessarily constitute the same crime. In order for these crimes to be persecuted in Ukraine, a local peculiarity must be taken on board. As for the architecture of international courts and tribunals, of course, their experience must also be taken advantage of. Our partners at the international transitory rights are also developing the architecture of how we can set up different types of international tribunals. On our side, we will be promoting the idea of local contexts. Do I understand you correctly that you are planning to share with the Ukrainian enforcement bodies, including the General Prosecutor's Office, your roadmap for both of you to coordinate your actions together with the Ukrainian authorities? Not only we plan, we also want to get in contact with the General Prosecutor's Office to cooperate more closely to see where we can be useful. We want to make sure that our materials will not prevent them from investigating, but rather helping them in their investigations. Ladies and gentlemen, if there are questions from the floor, you are welcome. Yana Timoshenko from Ukrinform. I would like to ask Ms. Malynka, where can we get hold of the Black Register? The book that you have presented today, is that the final product or it is going to be added? So far, we have stopped at this point in time. It has taken us 18 months to put together information available in the public domain. We have published in a book, but we are continuing to gather evidence of the war crimes. The work is going on. Of course, we'll be looking into further information available. We will publish them in one way or the other. The book is available on the website of our organization, Freerights Human Rights Association. There's a cue card available. It will make sure that you can download the book. The Black Registers will also be disseminated amongst the law enforcement agencies. We will share this book with those who gather information. We want to give these Black Registers to the regional libraries. The more books we have, the more copies will be distributed. We want this information to be available in different localities so that people not only of today, but the next generation will be able to know what was going on here. We want the next generation to be able to go to the libraries and read these tragic pages in the Ukrainian history. You mentioned about the English translation. The English translation is available. Do you plan to distribute these English language books amongst the different international stakeholders? Indeed, this is an important part of our mission to knock at the door of our international partners to share with them these atrocities. The English language book is only available in the electronic format, but we will distribute it as wide as we can. We cannot keep silent about such atrocities. It is not the right way to go. I would like to thank my panelists this morning for the presentation and, of course, for the work of your teams. My point is that, indeed, such a communication between government and non-governmental bodies is very important. It is important for all of us to get together to make sure that the victory is ensured and all those responsible for the war crimes are brought to justice. We will continue our work for the sake of our victory. We would like to thank the Ukrainian defenders. It's due to their efforts and heroism that we can come together. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes.